Hey guys, thought I'd make a quick video for my Earthshatter build that I got rank 1 Slayer with in the hardcore solo self-found Atlas event. This isn't gonna be a super detailed guide or anything, but I figured it could be an interesting video to go over the character a little bit. So I managed to get level 96 before I died, which was enough for a rank 1 demi, since it was a pretty rippy event. I ended up dying to an Atlas Invasion boss being detonated by another invading boss, so that probably would have one-shot me no matter how tanky I was, but overall I would say the build was pretty tanky despite dying to that. The damage, however, is pretty low, which is a problem for all fist-based melee builds right now. So I'm definitely hoping for some buffs for melee in 3.18, and on the bright side this build will probably be better next patch, or at least not get nerfed. For hardcore solo self-found, I think Shield Crush is mostly considered to be the best melee skill right now, but I would say Earthshatter is probably second best, and in softcore Lightning Strike is very good, but it's not very tanky and requires a lot of investment usually, and it's not really melee if you ask me, but even after the slam nerfs, I would say Earthshatter is still definitely viable, and by melee standards, I guess pretty good. But by no means is this a super powerful build or anything like that. But it works. And also the character is in Void League, so I'm just gonna show you the build in POB. Of course, I did manage to record a little bit of gameplay too before I died, so you can see a bit how the build plays. It's not really that different in terms of playstyle or how you build it. You Earthshatter, you Warcry, you use Call of Steel. It is pretty reliant on Call of Steel for the clear, which a lot of Warcry builds have that and have been like that for a while, and I think it's the same with Shield Crush. But yeah, I'm gonna go over the character a little bit more in Path of Building. Alright, so this is the character. I only played this for about, I think it was a little bit over 3 days game time, so it's not at all a very optimized character by any means. You can definitely improve the gear a ton, and probably there's some ways to optimize the tree and some things like that as well. Yeah, I'm sure there's ways to improve this, but this is the character that I had. A terrible axe, 560 DPS. The rest of the gear is pretty mediocre as well, but overall you're just looking to get a lot of life and preferably 100% spell suppression. I did not have that actually because I did not have access to a evasion based 6-link that I was able to use at least. So yeah, just a lot of life, spell suppression, resist capped of course, and curse and hit ring with vulnerability, and I'm using Worm Sign to get access to Rampage. Rampage is really nice for clear speed. It makes you a lot faster and gives a bunch of effects like DD and stuff like that, so it's really good. For the flasks, I'm using a Life Flask, Quartz Flask, Quicksilver Flask, Jade Flask, and Alliance Roar. You could use a regular granite as well, but since this build is missing quite a bit of damage, I would say, so using Alliance Roar made sense to me. And we have about 500,000 DPS, which is, yeah, it's not that good, but it works at least. I managed to get to tier 16s, and I'm not sure how good this build would be versus bosses. If you improve the gear a bit, like, you should be able to get around an 800 DPS axe, probably. I think the damage would go up quite a bit. And then of course I'm using a Lord of Steel because you pretty much have to in these builds to get enough AoE with a Call of Steel. Yeah, that's a big boost to the AoE damage, using Call of Steel to retract all the impales. Yeah, it's really good. And let's take a look at the skills. I'm using, of course, Earthshatter with Impale, Close Combat, Fist of War, Melee Fist, and Brutality. If I was on a 5 link, I would probably cut Fist of War. But yeah, that's pretty much it. And I'm using Splitting Steel, or you can use any steel skill to get access to Call of Steel, which again, it's a big boost to the AoE, and I'm using Berserk as sort of just to use on map bosses or like a panic button. It's a nice boost, but we don't have a lot of rage generation. I think it's just like 1 per second, so it's hard to keep it up, but yeah, it's nice to have. Then I'm using Determination, Defiance Banner, Purity of Elements, and Blood and Sand as my auras. I would like to try to use Pride instead of Purity of Elements, but again, I didn't have that much time to optimize the character, so just to get ailment immunity and elemental weakness cap, I'm using Purity of Elements. But yeah, you should try to get Pride instead and get ailment immunity from Pantheons and some crafts on your gear and things like that. And yeah, I'm using Flame Dash with faster casting as my movement skill. I have Molten Shell with cast when damage taken and increased duration, and of course Val Molten Shell as a defensive setup. And I'm using Intimidating Cry and Enduring Cry, as well as Seismic Cry as my war cries. Intimidating Cry and Seismic Cry will exert your attacks, Enduring Cry will not. So Enduring Cry is just used to get endurance charges, as well as blowing up these spikes from your Earthshatter. So yeah, in case you didn't know, Earthshatter, you slam the ground doing the initial impact damage, and then you leave spikes in the ground that you can blow up by using a Warcry close to them. So you combine this damage pretty much. And for like mapping, you just Earthshatter, Warcry, and then Call of Steel as your rotation, and then for bosses and single target, you Earthshatter 2 or 3 times, and then just Warcry, and you don't use Call of Steel. And then we have Ancestral Warsheath with Maim, just to get some extra damage, and Blood Rage to get frenzy charges, and this is from the ring, the Curse and Hate ring. And then I just have a little bit of a leveling setup if you wanted to use it. You can start off with Lancing Steel, I think it is, at level 1, with chance to bleed an Onslaught, and then get Shattering Steel at level 12, and then Vicious Projectiles if you have a 4-link. And then probably around 2nd lab or something like that, you can start using Earthshatter on a 4-link, probably like Earthshatter, Malefice, Brutality, Close Combat, or something like that. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the skills. Taking a look at the talent tree. For the Ascendancy, I'm using Bane of Legends, Headsman, Brutal Fervor, and Endless Hunger. So that gives us Overleech. This gives us stun immunity, which is nice. You don't want to get stunned while you're slamming in an animation. And this gives Reflect immunity, as well as some damage, and then of course 20% Cull. And since we have the Overleech, it's really nice to have Val Pact and some increased Life Leech stuff. Even though we only have 6.4k life, it feels like a lot more when you have Overleech and Val Pact, because you just shoot straight up whenever you lose HP, unless you get one shot, of course, like I did. And then we're also using Resolute Technique, since we are not a crit build. And then we have, this is where we get Rage, here we get Intimidate. And then, yeah, you're just getting a bunch of life. These reserve nodes are pretty much mandatory for every build now. You have this, Mastery is the same thing pretty much as the Lord of Steel. You can start using it, you can start using Call of Steel without Lord of Steel if you have this, I would say. But preferably you want both, I think. And then, yeah, you don't have to use these resist nodes if you have a bunch of resists on your gear. And yeah, I'm using these 3 Warcry clusters with this little extra node here. I found that this was enough cooldown recovery, in my experience at least. I thought, yeah, it was enough. You could go for this last one as well, but I found that these 3 were enough, especially when you have 20% quality on your Warcry games. But I think you could anoint this one possibly. I went for a defensive anoint instead, but I think that's probably a good option if you want to. But yeah, if I were to get level 100 or maybe lose these, I would probably take these ones, this, something like that. And yeah, to show with a little bit better gear, you should be able to get an axe like this pretty easily, I think. This one is like the one that Darky used in the gauntlet on his second character, which, I mean, that's just a 10-day league and it's SSF and it's a lot harder, so something like this should be realistic, I think. I just got pretty unlucky, I think, and I didn't really spend a lot of time on it. And then I think you should probably use a Risloth's coil to get some more damage if you wanted to. And yeah, what else? The Pride, of course. And then you end up at a little bit over 1.2 million, which, yeah, I think it's serviceable at least. But yeah, I don't have that, but it shouldn't be too hard to get. And defensively, I think, yeah, something like this. We do have this doesn't take into account that we have Overleech with Valpact, of course, and we also have a decent amount of suppression, and we should try to get 100% as well. So yeah, pretty tanky. And but yeah, overall, I would say that to conclude it's not the best build I've ever played, but it got the job done, and I'm pretty happy with the result. If for some reason you really want to play a Slayer melee build, or you just want something different to do in the last month of Scourge, I think this is a decent option. And again, I'm definitely hoping for some melee buffs in the next patch, because right now it's not in a very good spot, but if it gets buffed, maybe something like this could be good again. And that's pretty much all I had to say on this. Feel free to subscribe if you haven't already. I'll try to get another video out before the new league comes out. Probably around when patch notes comes out to go over my league starter. But yeah, I'll see you in the next one.